up. Yeah. Hey, do yo. Trophied up. Yeah. Hey, do yo. Trophied up. Do your dance when the G's up. G. Spaced out, got me geeked up. 10 toes on the west, can I beat us? You cannot. Shining every time they meet us. Rack 'em up, since 96. Been number one in LA, something slight, that's the gist.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talkin Galaxy. Today, we actually have a game coming up, 2 of them. So we have we're gonna have our game predictions going up later today. But we have Alex Ruiz coming around 8:30. So if you're only here for him, then just stick with us for the moment, and we'll have him on very soon. But in the meantime, we have Tab and I. I think we're pretty cool guys. So Tab, how you doing, man?
Doing good. I mean, weather's not fantastic, but I mean, we're living. We got games coming up. It's officially game week. I mean, life's getting good.
It is. It is. I'm very excited to be back at Dignity Health Sports Park. That is, it feels like it's been a very, very long time. Like I've kind of like put the Galaxy out of my mind, which is hilarious because we have a Galaxy podcast. But I've, tried to put last season and everything that happened out of my mind. But we're here now, and we got an actual season to cover. So, how'd my haircut go? I mean, it's not chopped, so I'd say it went pretty good. But yeah, Tab, Galaxy, we got the season to fucking cover right now, dude. Yeah, the hair does look kind of the same because I just got back from playing.
Yeah, I don't know about this. We're gonna have some conspiracy theories going on in the freaky chat, so we'll
About
keep an
what?
eye on this. About your haircut and missing last pod. So, I
Okay,
mean,
wait,
we'll keep an
what's
eye
the
on it.
conspiracy theory?
That you didn't get a haircut and you were doing other things and you missed the pod.
I was doing other things. What other things?
That's for off-camera stuff, and we'll let
Okay,
the
dude.
viewers decide
All
what's
right,
going
man.
on.
No, this is great. This is a great start to the podcast. We're already throwing accusations. Look, Tab, I've heard some things about you in your time. I don't think you should be talking right now. By the
I don't know
way,
what you're talking about.
my light's going to fall over at another point during this podcast, and I'm praying to God it doesn't hit me. Because naturally my lighting in my room sucks. My lighting in my room is just absolutely dreadful. It makes me like red. Some of the previous podcasts I've been red. So I'm like, okay, wait, I actually kind of need to fix this. So now I just have a light beaming in my eyes constantly. So look, what happens at UC Irvine Student Center stays at UC Irvine Student Center. Anyway, let's get into season predictions. Galaxy runs LA. You and I have coordinated season predictions with pretty much every relevant content creator in Galaxy Land. I think we had 15 people participate in this thing. It was a massive prediction sheet. Only could have 5 people collaborate on the post. So if you guys are watching and you weren't collabed on the post, I'm very sorry. However, Tab, I just look. I'll pull this up. Okay, not that up. We've already went through that whole thing. I will pull this up, however. Breakout player of the year, brother. Novak Mitrovic. My only thing with Novak Mitrovic and my only gripe with you picking him is the fact that this is his 4th year at the club. Look, you are not alone in this. That man next to you, Mr. Galaxy Buzz, who is no longer me, aka Chris, picked Novak Mitrovic as well. Why? Why do you think? What defines breakout to you? So people have a better context. Because when you see Novak Mitrovic and then you look to the right and see Sanabria, and then you see Ruben Ramos Jr., I mean, there's just a huge drop off. In like what the amount of minutes they got last year. So what do you define as breakout player of the year?
So I think there's multiple definitions for breakout. I think you can have a player break out into the first team. Like I think so. In this case, you're talking Galaxy, so you're saying Snobber is your breakout player.
Whoa. Talking Galaxy.
Ramos.
I said Ruben Ramos. I'm talking Galaxy here, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
In case you were wondering.
So in that case, he's breaking into the first team. So you're thinking he's going to get some first team minutes to get a decent amount of minutes. Like last year, you made a bet. You think he's going to go over the 115-minute mark?
Yeah, it was like what, 190 we ended up deciding on in all competitions.
Yeah. So
Yo,
you're
okay, guys, chat. Will Ruben Ramos Jr. get over 190 minutes throughout every competition in 2026? I said yes.
I said
And
no.
and
They were putting a bet on it.
if Tab's right, then I will owe him a jersey. And if he is wrong, then he will owe me a jersey. So I think he will get more than that. But go on.
So I don't want to put any uh, false accusations on Ruben Ramos. I think he's a great player, but I just don't think he's getting minutes in the squad where you have Marco Reus, you have Eric Tommy just came in, and you should have a bunch of attacking talent, and that's kind of where Ramos kind of provides him. So I don't think he's gonna get the minutes that you think, and so I was so confident I put a jersey on the line, and you joined me, so that's that. So in that
Yeah.
case, Ruben Ramos Jr. is your breakout player. So you think his breakout's going to be getting first team minutes?
Yeah, I
My
do.
breakout, yeah. So then my breakout in my terminology is Novak Mitrovic has consistently got hate this last season because of his performances. I'm saying he's breaking out and he's not going to be getting that hate and he's going to be the consistent starter because if you remember at the start of last season, he lost a spot to John McCarthy. It was his spot, start CVI, play a few games, got dropped, and he obviously got back when John McCarthy made his mistakes. So in my terms, this breakout is going to be he's going to consistently start and he's going to get the fans' approval. So that's my
Ooh, that's a
definition of
bold
breakout.
prediction. See, I could see that by that definition, but where do you think he'd rank in Major League Soccer? Because if he's breaking out and he's expected to start all 34 games, because he could look at the most minutes, almost everyone had Novak Mitrovic. Where will he rank in the league? Where will Novak Mitrovic rank in Major League Soccer after this season?
There's some great goalkeepers in MLS. I was just seeing Martin Paz, who is FC Dallas's keeper. He was transferred to Ajax, and he was FC Dallas's like second string almost. But Chelsea was starting, but then he got dropped for Colodi. There's a lot of good MLS keepers, and I think with the influx of the defensive revolution that with the Galaxy has got, I think you can see McCarthy jump to maybe top 10 keepers in MLS.
McCarthy.
Obviously, or Mikovic, my fault. Mikovic. So I think Mikovic could jump to the top 10. I think, obviously, like I said, there's great keepers, but I think with the defense around him and the help that he's getting, if he doesn't get top 10 keepers, I think maybe then we're going to have a conversation and say, is this guy the right man for the job?
I think he could be. I think currently he's top 20.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll get some heat for that, but I don't think he's bottom 10. Definitely not bottom 5. But I think he's an average goalkeeper in Major League Soccer. I just think Galaxy fans are itching for an elite keeper. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lamine Yamal. Apologize that you've been in a poor run of form as of recent. Yeah, Tab. I guess we'll just avoid that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Lamine.
It's been a terrible watch for hate watches today. It's been a terrible day. Obviously, Madrid got their win in. LAFC is putting BTA to some Honduras team full plumbers.
Okay, but they put out their first team.
Okay, yeah. We'll talk about that later in our CCC predictions and all, but we got some opinions on that. At least I do. So we'll make you guys wait.
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, we'll make him wait, but I've already seen 2 penalties. I've counted 2 penalties for LAFC within, I think it was 25 minutes of their season starting. So they're right back at it. It seems like they picked up right where they left off. And yeah, I mean, they'll probably make a semi-deep run, but we'll talk about if the Galaxy can have the ability to do that. Anyway, flipping back to the predictions here. You had the Galaxy 5th in the Western Conference. I had the Galaxy 7th in the Western Conference. And, standings wise, this could mean as little as 1 to 2 points, like literally. The margins could be so fine within MLS, but that's still a big difference when it, 7th seed, you're playing the 2nd, whether that be like an LAFC or San Diego, you're in for a tough matchup. If you get that 5th seed, I think it's a bit more like obviously favorable to you. You don't get that home playoff game. I know Galaxy Clips, Eli think that we're going to get a home playoff game. I'm here to speak for myself because I don't have a platform other than this to speak for myself here. I was a little surprised at the shift in tone from Galaxy fans this offseason, and I think it's good and I appreciate it. It's just last season, all of the energy, obviously, I mean, I don't need to explain why, was negative, right? You add Justin Hack, you add Jakub Golesnes, you still are without Ricky Puig, and people are disappointed with me picking seventh. I saw some comments on that post that were along the lines of, really, seventh place, like, is that all, is that all the Galaxy are going to achieve? Basically, trying to undermine the fact that that's a significant jump from 14th. That's literally jumping double up the standings. So I think we have to take things in stride a little here. I think we have to take a step back. I know the slate's completely clean for the LA Galaxy, but you have to understand. Here's why I said seventh place. Here's why I think the Galaxy will be seventh place. Midfield. I think that defensively, why we're jumping double is because of that defense. I think our form the second half of last season would suggest that we're not as bad as 14th. I know we're going to be without Ricky Puig again, but we were still managing results without him second half of last year. And defensively, for a team that conceded as many goals as they are, I feel more confident about our defense than I do our offense right now, which is a little wild. But that's honestly just how I feel. I feel like Jakub Golesnes was the perfect guy for the now. Perfect guy to lead the back line, one of the top center backs in MLS. And you have Justin Hack. Everybody wanted Justin Hack. It's to be determined whether he plays in the midfield or in that back line alongside, Amir Garces or Jakub Golesnes in the 3-back, 5-back. It depends. However, I'm a little worried about the depth. You saw, we'll go into some injury updates, but Eric Tommy's out already. Eric Tommy's out. So that leaves the backup to Marco Reus, a very fragile and aging Marco Reus, the backup to being probably Tucker Lepley. And I love Tucker Lepley. I'm very high on him as a player. But I don't know with that midfield depth. When you compare it around Major League Soccer, I'm very underwhelmed with the Galaxy's midfield depth, I believe. Our front line's very good. It was I like the Klaus addition. I think he's a perfect piece of the puzzle in the attack. Our defense got significantly better, but we have to take a step back and realize that this is a building season, and I think seventh place is perfectly fair. I do think we'll probably get eliminated first round by whoever that second seed is, but if we can make an upset, anything could happen in the playoffs. We'll get a home playoff game. If we can make things shake, you catch momentum at the end, maybe we could go on a little bit of a run, but I think we need to take a step back right now. But you have fifth place for the Galaxy. You want to go into why you have fifth place?
I was debating between fifth and sixth, and obviously, like you said, that this could be the decider of maybe 5 points, something like one win away from getting higher up. It's super close, especially in the top of the table. This Western Conference is extremely close, I think. Obviously you have the top teams that are going to run away with it, that are going to be maybe the hiring teams, and they'll make the further run in the playoffs and have a better chance of winning. But I think the Galaxy, they're not quite there yet. I think we are still that Ricky Puig away. I don't think we have the 10 replacement, that Ricky Puig player, to kind of lift us into that top spot and be the top dogs in the West. I think we're still missing that, and we're not going to get that because Ricky is in here. So in that case, I dropped him down to fifth because I think with the defensive additions, I think we're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the Western Conference. So I think the main reason we were so low last season was because the defensive mistakes. If we just shore up some of those mistakes, we were top? I think we're destined to be fifth place based off of half the season around that. It's fourth, yeah. And so we solved those problems. So I don't see why we can't get up to that fifth place spot. So that was my reasoning for that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think ceiling and floor, I want to hear your take on this too, because obviously seventh place, fifth place, these are very specific predictions. As we talked about, the West can be, very, very wild. And it's wide open. It's for the taking. I think outside of the top 4 teams, which I would expect to be somewhere in the mix, top 4 in my mind, and things can change so quickly in Major League Soccer. But I think, you have San Diego, LAFC, Seattle, Minnesota. I do not think the Galaxy are better than any of those
I
four
think
teams.
Minnesota is going to go higher than the Galaxy.
What?
You think Minnesota is going to be higher than the Galaxy?
Yeah. I
They
think they have a
lost
lot of
same
they have a
player.
lot of allocation money to end up adding players. I think
Sorry.
what you're seeing now isn't the final product of that roster.
I don't know about Minnesota, I can't lie, but I agree with all the other points. I think so. Let's see. So I said fifth. So I think San Diego. I think LAFC. I mean, it pains me to say those teams, but I think those will be higher.
Yeah, they're locked.
Vancouver, and then
Oh, right.
Seattle, and then us.
It could be Vancouver too. I mean, I think they'll definitely be in the mix. They've also been a team that's lost a lot of players. They're a team that if they dropped off next year, I would not be very surprised if they dropped off from, that first place to around 6th, 7th,
It could
like
be like a.
I wouldn't
It
be
could be
very, huh?
a Columbus Crew situation. They were one of the top teams in the East, and then I believe last season they were just above the playoff play-in game.
Mhm.
I mean, and they're still
Yep.
a good team. Don't get me wrong, but results just didn't go their way. They didn't get those games to win like they did previous seasons. So it could be that kind of situation, and maybe Galaxy leapfrog them and get fourth.
Yeah, and Thomas Muller's a DP now.
Yeah.
You know, for as good as he is he an upper echelon DP within Major League Soccer? We'll see. He has another year under his belt now, so we'll have to watch that one play out. I do believe Minnesota with James Rodriguez now are going to be very, very interesting. We'll see if Kelvin Yeboah could reach that 2024 form that he found. And they have a lot of allocation money. I know they lost pieces, but I think without a doubt they'll end up adding a bunch of quality players. So I would not be very surprised to see Minnesota make a jump. I don't think Eric Ramsey was that good of a head coach. I'm not sure who they appointed, but they could see a Jasper Sorensen type jump from a new head coach coming in and just taking them to the next level potentially. So yeah, I think Minnesota, or I think Vancouver and Minnesota will probably be both ahead of us. 6th place was my original prediction. I think the Galaxy's floor, like if they were below this, I would be surprised. I would be surprised if the Galaxy were below 8th. I think, and this is going to be a wide range here because we have to just, like we said, anything can be separated by 2 wins. Two balls not bouncing your way, and you jump from 4th to 8th. And I think our ceiling is 5th. So I would say our floor is 8th and our ceiling is 5th, maybe ceiling 4th. Maybe if everything goes right, I think the Galaxy could reach 4th. I just think those three teams at the top of the West are just head and shoulders just going to be above the Galaxy this season. And that's okay because we're leaning towards 2027 and building towards that. Anyway, we got more predictions.
I'll go
ahead.
to my ceiling and floor. So I agree with you mostly. I think our ceiling, it could be 3rd. I think if the Galaxy play the cards right, I think they could. I think LAFC is a lock on 1st or 3rd. I think Vancouver could be one of those teams that could be a lock depending on how they start. We'll have to see because some of these teams haven't had great preseason like matches. I believe Vancouver hasn't had the best preseason, but neither did we in our 2024 season where we went on to win the cup. It's hard to see these preseason games, and we'll get a better gauge of what teams are going to look like come this weekend. So I think with that, I think our ceiling is 3rd. But I agree with you, floor. I think the floor is 8th place. I don't think we drop into that playoff game to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think we got a minimum just get above that 8th place spot. I don't care where else. Like if we get 7th place, I'll be happy. But we just can't get below 8th.
Yeah. And I think people take it as a negative. But I don't think it is. When you look at what this team placed last season, to say that they're even going to jump as high as 7th, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And yeah, going further down the predictions here, I had my MVP as Joseph Paintsil. I'm a huge Paintsil believer. I just, there's Galaxy memes. Joseph Paintsil is just clinical. He's just an absolute clinical player, and I think what you saw in 2024 is more of what you're going to see this year than the out of confidence Joseph Paintsville. He's a very confidence driven player. And I think you'll see him back to his best. It's a World Cup year for Ghana. He needs to make that World Cup squad. If, God forbid, anything were to happen to Semenyo or Kudus or anybody in that Ghana attack, he might be tasked with stepping up. And the market's going to be huge, and eyes will be on him in that Ghana squad if he gets playing time, because they're playing against England in the group stage. You know, they're in a difficult group, and they still have the ability to make a potential round of 16 run. I think is probably Ghana's ceiling in the World Cup, depending on how that group shakes out. So I think Paintsville is going to be on a tear this season. I think his runs, as long as he could stay on the field, I think the Galaxy will, be of great benefit. I see why you picked Gabriel Peck, so I'll let you switch over to why you picked Gabriel Peck for your MVP.
Like I said, John Nelson, my outing prediction. Peck responds to my DM, so I choose him. No, I'm kidding. I'm just playing. I think Peck. I think he's due for a bounce back year. I think he has had a pretty good preseason. He's got 3 in 5 games, and he's been a main contributor to all the goals that we've scored. So I think, just looking off preseason, I think Gabriel Peck is looking like a different man coming into the season. I think playing with Klaus and also Nascimento, I think he's got a good supporting cast around him. Obviously, last year he started the season with no Joseph Paintsville. He started with Christian Ramirez at the 9, and we saw how that happened. And that was the first 10, 15 games where they were Paintsville-less. Now he's got Paintsville, and now he's got a competent 9. So I think he can get a lot more goals, and I think he's going to have a bounce back year. So that's my MVP pick.
I would love to see it, because I think that would mean he gets his Europe move after this year. What needs to change for Gabriel Peck from last year? It looked like he was also out of this whole team was out of confidence, but just the ability to take on people one-on-one tight spaces, he just wasn't succeeding in it. Simply, just what do you think needs to change for Gabriel Peck?
I don't think much needs to change. I think it was just the supporting cast, like I said. Obviously, you saw the start last season without Paintsville. They're almost double teaming Peck, and he had nowhere to go. He just had to kind of maneuver against 2 players almost every single time. They'd force him to the other side, so Peck would rarely get the ball. And when he did get the ball, he was quadruple marked, triple marked. He had a bunch of players around him. So I think with the addition of Paintsville, I think with Klaus holding off the center backs, they won't drift over wide to kind of stop Peck. Peck will have a lot more space to do his thing, and I think that's where the best Peck is at, where he has space and he has time to dribble. And I think that's what we're going to see. So that's my reasoning for MVP as well.
Yeah. All of the other 4 people in this slide picked Gabriel Peck as well. So a lot of people agreed with you. And then Golden Boot, I have Paintsville for MVP. And I think a large part of that is because he will have the Golden Boot for the LA Galaxy. You picked Joao Klaus. I don't think he's had over 12 goals in a single season, which isn't a knock on him. This Galaxy attack is loaded. Just Joao Klaus is your Golden Boot leader. Why do you have Joao Klaus?
I had Joao Klaus because I think, obviously, when he was at St. Louis, he didn't have the best supporting cast around him. He had Pompeu, who was an unproven MLS player coming into his tenure at St. Louis, and he's a pretty good player, but he's no Gabriel Peck. He's no Joseph Paintsville. It's worth noting that St. Louis spent their DP spots on a goalkeeper and a 6. So he wouldn't have that production coming up top. And now coming to Galaxy, he's got 2 DP wingers surrounding him. So if you feed him the ball, he's going to score. And I'm pretty sure he had 1 goal this preseason and playing 2 games. So that's pretty good scoring to game ratio. And if he continues that, he's going to have 15 plus. So
that's one way of looking at it. Let's take a 2-game sample size and put it across 34.
That's the only way you can test it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In that case, Lucas Sanabria is going to be different this year.
His FIFA rating is also 67 rated, so that means he's going to be fantastic.
Okay.
Actually,
wait, what?
I think it's 71. I think it's 71.
Okay. I was going to say, if his FIFA card's only 67 rated, he's a quality player. I think he'll help out Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsville a lot. You haven't had a number 9 of this caliber since Dejan Joveljic, and I think he fits the Vanny system potentially even better than Dejan did. obviously not a better player than Dayon, but just systematically, I think he fits, especially with that Ricky Pooch, that kind of false nine role a bit more. Defender of the year, you and I are very united on Jakub Golesnes. I think we're very high on him. Just, I don't know, maybe you have a different reasoning, but this guy's already very established in his career. He was second in defender of the year in Major League Soccer last year. So even if he's not, in the conversation in Major League Soccer, I think he would definitely will be our defender of the year for the Galaxy. Because he's supposed to be. You spent all that money for him. You shipped over, I think, $2.1 million, including salaries, including wages and transfer fees. So you paid, this season $2.1 million to Jakub Golesnes. That's a lot of money for an older age center back, but that shows how much the Galaxy believe in him as a player, and I do. He's a leader on that back line, and just him being alongside Justin Hack and Amiro Garces defensively, with our fullback core, which is probably the deepest in Major League Soccer, is just, it's going to be scary. It's going to be scary, but not for us. So, Jakub Golesnes, why do you have him as your defender of the year?
So pretty similar points for me. I think obviously has a pedigree in the MLS, but also looking around the other positions in the back line, every other position's kind of up in the air who's going to start. So I thought Glesnes was kind of the safe pick, thinking that he's going to be the lock at the center back. You have Aude, Yamane, Harbour Mill at right back, and who knows, anyone could start in that position. So that was pretty volatile pick. So I didn't choose anyone right back. Left back, you have Aude and Nelson. That's pretty volatile as well. That could go either way. And Garces, he didn't have a great season, so you don't know where you're going to get out of him. The one game I went to versus Chicago, I didn't think he had a fantastic game. He didn't have a terrible game, but it's just not what we thought he was going to be. So in that case, I was like, okay, Glesnes is the last man standing, so I chose Glesnes.
Yeah. I mean, it's preseason. It's preseason,
Yeah.
I think you take those things, and I'm going to be completely honest with everybody right now watching this. I did not watch a single preseason game. I did not watch a Coachella Valley game. I think it's probably fun to go to in person. I went last year and I thought it was fun. The drive, I think, is a bit difficult.
That was not fun.
Yeah, I know you probably made that 5-hour round trip drive.
Yeah, right around that.
Yep. So just, that's not fun. That's not fun, but I'm sure the games were. And, going back to this, just something a little more niche on breakout player a year, a player that did not get 200 minutes for any first team that they were on, whether it's Philly, blah, blah, blah. Who's going to break out into this first team tab? Give me a Ruben Ramos Jr. like prediction. I know Jody picked Dylan Vanny, which was a very interesting one, but you saw it last year with Chris Rindov. Chris Rindov was on nobody's radars, really. I hadn't heard of that guy going into the season. And he goes out and he establishes himself, gets a first team deal and a multi-year contract extension with the Galaxy. So who's your prediction for that? Who could break into this Galaxy squad that isn't on a radar?
I think, it's not Ruben Ramos Jr. Level, but I think maybe you could say Tucker Lempley. I think this is kind of his decisive year. He's got a club contract year coming for next year. Yeah. And if they want him to pick up that extension, he's gonna have to play like he deserves it. And he hasn't got a ton of minutes, and that's just purely because the attacking talent is so high. But I think if he has the minutes, he could definitely take his chance. He obviously started a game back in the 2024 season over in Salt Lake City versus RSL. He's shown that Vanny trusts him, but it's just he's got so many players ahead of him that it's tough to get minutes. So I think if anyone's going to get that breakout player kind of title that hasn't broken out prior to the season, I think Tucker Lempley could be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll wrap it up quickly before we introduce our guest here. Most minutes, I know you had Novak because he's a keeper. I don't think there's much more explaining than that. I had Jakub Golesnes. I was the only person to have Jakub Golesnes. I looked at it. He started all 34 games for Philadelphia Union last year. This guy was an out and out starter. He was playing consistently throughout the entire game. And I know we have depth on that back line, but I think he's the one guy on this whole pitch that you cannot pull off the field. And I don't think the Galaxy will. I think he's going to be steady Eddie. I mean, knock on wood, he hasn't been very injury prone. So I think he'll stay on the field for the Galaxy and get most minutes. So I'm hoping to see that. And then most assists, add Marco Royce. Speaking of depending on staying on the field, I think if Royce stays on the field, his quality will just prevail through him. And you had Gabriel Peck. So why do you have Peck? And just he's the
I
GOAT.
think, yeah, he responds to my DMs. Nah.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
I think with the inclusion of Klaus, I think there's going to be less attention on him. And I think that's where Peck kind of shines. Obviously, last season he had the spotlight on him, and it was only him due to the fact that Ricky Puig kind of took the spotlight in 2024. And he kind of took that spotlight away from when Ricky was gone. And I don't think he shined up to that potential that he probably does have. I think with the addition of Klaus, it kind of takes some spotlight away from him and he can kind of do his thing. And I think that's where he can get assists. Obviously, you saw him and Klaus connect earlier in versus Chicago, I believe, and they got the goal. So I think you're going to see a lot of those combinations. But yeah, it's between him and Royce. But like you said, Royce is it's a pretty volatile pick just because his injury history. So I end up going with Peck for that. Yeah, you're muted, Brochacho.
Okay, perfect. These predictions, the Galaxy going into 2026, we need a man to come into the show who covers the LA Galaxy, who is a journalist for the LA Galaxy. He does great work. And he's Ricky Puig's favorite man. He's Ricky Puig's favorite man on Twitter. They have great interactions over there. I would like to bring to the show Alex El Profe Ruiz. How are you doing, man?
Hey, fellas, how's it going? Thanks for having me on tonight.
Of course. The Galaxy are getting ready to kick off. We are literally 2 days away from the 2026 season starting and not stopping besides that little weird World Cup break until probably November, maybe December if we're lucky. However, we would like to hear some of your predictions for the LA Galaxy going into 2026. But thank you, first of all, for coming onto the show. Would you like to start off by giving your background and how you got into covering the Galaxy?
Yeah, so I'm Alex Ruiz. I cover the LA Galaxy for the Galactic Tribune, which is my newsletter on Substack. I previously covered the LA Galaxy for thestriker.com, and that was a great experience. But yeah, I think over time, getting older, I always wanted to be involved in the beautiful game in some way. I always believed that, it just felt natural, it just felt right. And so when, being a professional soccer player kind of didn't work out at first, this is kind of the avenue that I decided I would kind of go down. So it's been great really getting to just grow over the last couple of years and kind of, be able to, be someone who people can rely on to, get LA Galaxy news, to analyze the team and do different things like that. So yeah, I've definitely, built, I think, a good enough foundation where, you guys can, rely on whatever I report, whatever I tweet out. And this is, I think, is going to be my 5th season covering the LA Galaxy. So really excited for this upcoming season. Very interesting because I really don't know what to expect at all this year. It feels pretty much like a blank canvas at the moment after, winning in 2024 the MLS Cup and then last year being a disaster of a season. This year I really don't know what to expect with all the different additions, with, all the World Cup break in the middle. I really don't know what to expect. So I think this is the one year that I've covered Daily Galaxy where I really can't predict what direction it's going to go in.
Well, we have predictions coming up, so we're gonna have to get something out of you tonight. No, I do appreciate your coverage of the LA Galaxy. I've been on Twitter long enough to see your work. Definitely one of those news sources where anything that you put out, you just know that there's a very good layer of credibility that comes from it, and it needs to be taken seriously. So appreciate your contributions to the Galaxy community. Just to anybody in the chat, because I know we have some people watching, who want to get more involved with the LA Galaxy and journalism potentially. What's your advice to them? Would you just say?
I just say just go for it. That's the one thing, whatever you put your mind to, you can do. I think for me, obviously, when I first started out, whether it was getting on camera or writing things, it was nervous. I generally didn't feel like not that I didn't have the talent, but I didn't feel like I had the ability to kind of do it consistently and be able to kind of at the same time enjoy it. But I think as I started putting out videos, as I started writing out articles, you get better at it. You build a routine. You feel more comfortable in your element. Right now, I feel like I'm in my element right now, being able to kind of just talk and write. If you compare it to how when I first started out. But yeah, I just recommend just do what you want to do, whether that's posting reels, whether that's articles, whether that's just posting quirky little facts, anything that you do, go for it, do it. The only thing stopping you is yourself, and I think that's the message I told myself at the start. It might feel like nobody will read it or see it, but somebody will. What matters to people who consume any sports media, any content is are you putting out things consistently? Are you someone that can play with my brain when it comes to analyzing sports, or can we have a discussion about what we watch? Because three of us here, we all watch the LA Galaxy, we all keep up with the news, we all keep up with everything around the club. But I think if you're a journalist and someone who wants to cover a soccer team or a sports team in general, how do you keep that story moving? How do you keep people's minds racing and thinking? How do you keep people engaged with maybe some characters you might not know at the moment? I remember one of my first articles, big feature articles I wrote at the time, was in 2022, I believe, was the feature on Jalen Neal before he broke out and got first team minutes. He was a guy a lot of people were high on. He was a player that if you watched LA Galaxy 2 at the time, he was someone that a lot of people were hyping up, and a lot of people were excited to see if he could break out into that Galaxy first team. Jalen Neal was really young at the time. I was able to interview him, get that feature out. And then a year later, he's, getting first team minutes. He's, able to play at the MLS level. So it doesn't matter where you start, who you talk to, as long as you just find somewhere to, be able to be in your element, continue to tell stories about the Galaxy or about soccer, about anything, whether it's, written form, TikToks, videos, things like that. Just do it. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help you grow. And I feel definitely very grateful that, being able to do that at the start was able to get the attention of some people. And eventually that kind of led to where I'm at right now.
You hit that mute again.
Yeah, I keep doing that whenever I type. I have this very loud keyboard. So whenever I type, I'm like, oh, shoot, I do not want that. I do not want that in the stream audio. No, thank you very much for that advice to everybody. I'm sure a lot of people watching do appreciate that very much and appreciate your work as we do. You kind of talked about the fact that this is a blank canvas. I mean, we go over predictions. Would I honestly nothing would surprise me at this point. If we went on to win MLS Cup, it'd be like, well, I mean, the writing was on the wall, I guess. You would look back and be like, those defensive additions really did matter. Or if we missed the playoffs again, you'd be like, maybe the signs were there because of the midfield depth and, this and that. You could look back with 2020 hindsight, but this is really just a confusing season we're going into. And it all started with the Ricky Puig news, really. At the start of the year, Ricky Puig went down and in training in Barcelona. Well, that was what we were told. And news breaks that his status for this season was in question. And a few days later, they confirmed that he had to undergo another surgery on his ACL, ending another season for him. And last year was up in the air. Is he going to come back at a point? Can he come back? And he ends up not. The Galaxy were very bad. They didn't need him to come back because it was what it was last year. This year, it was a very positive outlook. You add Hack, you add Gillespie, and you're like, okay, I like where this team's going. You put Ricky Puig back into that fold, and even if you don't get the same Ricky as 2024, this is still going to be a very good Galaxy team. And then he's out. And then he's out another season. Just what was your initial thoughts and reactions as a journalist when Ricky Puig goes down for yet another season? I mean, the last time we're going to see this guy play going into 2027 is 2024 as a DP. So just what was your initial reaction to all that?
Yeah, I think one of my first thing was just asking around about what happened, right? Because you hear he goes down, but why? All these different things like that. Was pretty silent from the club until we had media availability about a month or two ago. The first one of the year where Will Kuntz comes out and says, it's just one of those things where it happened during like a training session because Ricky Puig spends his offseason in Barcelona. He spends his offseason in his home and, getting back to condition himself, getting back to the rigors of moving his body and this like that in the right soccer way that he's going to prepare himself for the upcoming season. Unfortunately, that's the moment when the ACL kind of just gives out on him again, where he feels again. From what I was told, it was one of those things where it wasn't like a sharp pain where he went down and immediately knew something was off. It was one of those things where it was kind of a tweak, something kind of felt a little weird, got it checked out, and that's kind of when they decided that they needed to do the surgery again. But yeah, I think hearing that at the time, it was one of those things where it kind of just stopped the momentum the LA Galaxy had built the entire offseason, where you get Jakob Glusness, a guy who's, one of the best MLS defenders. You have Justin Hack, one of the most coveted free agents, join the LA Galaxy, right? You have all this optimism, all this positive news coming out, and to hear that Ricky Puig is going to be out for another season is definitely heartbreaking for the players, for the fan base, and for everybody as well. I think personally for me, I was, in the process of getting interviews for a story about ACL recoveries. I was going to talk to medical professionals. I was going to talk to former athletes who had dealt with that. So, it was one of those things where it's like, man, like that kind of, threw that to the side. But also too, I know the team as well. They were gutted for Ricky being gone for another year, given the sacrifices he had done to help LA win the 2024 MLS Cup. And the one thing I think that was good the Galaxy did was immediately they announced that he would not play the entirety of the season.
Yeah.
Not leaving that dangling optimism of will he, won't he show up later in the year. It's kind of something they learned from last year, which was, we could have had an open DP slot. They could have been able to, use that to have a more successful season last year. But I think the Galaxy handled that situation well. I think, not for this to sound messed up, but I don't think anybody really is talking or cares too much now about, the injury, given that, he's going to be on the shelf for the entire season. The team is moved on in a way from talking about this, where everyone's just laser focused on these next couple of days because you have 4 games in 10 days. You have to be ready. You have to work on your fitness, things like that. So I think the good thing here is that the club has kind of moved on, and I think the fan base in a way, from what I can tell, has moved on a little bit in the sense that it's not the first thing that comes to mind whenever you're discussing the LA Galaxy.
Yeah. So we've brought a few additions. We've got Klaus, we've got Tommy, we got Glesnes, we got Hack. Do you have a player that you think is going to be the key signing for the season in your mind?
I think it has to be Klaus. Obviously, you have the defensive additions with center backs with Glesnes and Hack, who's very versatile, can play as a 6 or as a center back. But I think Joao Klaus is going to be the real big piece to this team because last season the striker output was horrific. You didn't get much from Christian Ramirez. You kind of didn't really get much from Nascimento. And remember, last season he kind of had to slowly build his way into the starting lineup. It took a while for him to get actual genuine minutes and actually affect the first team. And then he got hurt towards the end of the season, and you kind of go back to square one. But, Klaus is a proven MLS veteran. He's a guy who, has experience scoring in this league. He knows the rigors of this league, the travel, the way that things operate, right? He's not a completely foreign signing who has to adjust to different things. I mean, he went from St. Louis to LA. I mean, that's an upgrade in itself. Not to mention the level of talent he's playing with now, and Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsil, having Marco Royce behind him. It's just a huge upgrade in talent that he was accustomed in St. Louis. So I think he's going to be the key for the LA Galaxy this season. I know Greg Vanney in the last press conference we had on Monday was talking about Klaus, talking about his ability to hold up the ball, to create for others as well. And you saw in his assist to Peck in the game against Chicago, right, where you kind of see just the touch he has with the ball, where he can set up teammates, where he can read the game to hold up the ball and analyze the runs of Peck and Paintsil. I thought he was really good in those hold up moments. And I think Vanney has a big point because Christian Ramirez can do that at times, but he's not as strong or as physical, and he can't necessarily stay there as the focal point up top for a while. And Nascimento, again, he's just, how would I describe it? I feel like there's a lot for him to kind of grow into his body and grow into kind of being a striker, because a lot of his time in Brazil was kind of playing as a false nine, a guy who's, very good with the ball at his feet, but the back to goal striker play I think needs a lot of work. And Klaus already has that. Again, the guy's in the prime years of his career, and I think if he's able to at least, get 12 goals and assists, I think that's gonna be a successful season. I think that's really gonna elevate the Galaxy's attack and get everybody in that front line going.
Right.
Yeah, and so we have our predictions that we kind of went over previous to when you're on, and I'm gonna get one out of you. So, Golden
Got it.
Boot.
Um,
I pro João Klaus, and my reasoning was in St. Louis, he had two DPs on his team. Apart from him, those DPs were a six in Edward Leuven and then Roman Berkey in goal. He's now got two DPs to the side of him on both wings. So that's my reason for João Klaus, Golden Boot. So who is your Golden Boot winner, you think?
I know it's kind of tough. I feel like this year Klaus might be more of a provider than a goal scorer. I think he will pick his moments when to be lethal in front of goal. But I just think Gabriel Peck, this has to be his year. I mean, at 25 years old, a guy who's you've seen his ability to change games with his dribbling, with his way to kind of navigate through tight spaces. I think Klaus and Peck are going to build a real good connection, and I think you're going to see Peck flourish into a great goal scorer this season. So for me, I think he's going to lead the club in goals.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. We went over some of those predictions like minutes. I said Jakub Kolesnes, Tab said Novak Mitrovic. I did want to touch on Novak Mitrovic a little bit because a lot of controversy within the Galaxy fan base on if he should still be on this roster as the number one goalkeeper after last season. You saw some of that syndrome after 2023 with Jonathan Bond, obviously now Houston Dynamo goalkeeper. Where do you stand on Novak Mitrovic? Because you kind of touched on this being a make or break year for Gabriel Peck. Obviously not in the same sense, but it is for Novak Mitrovic too, because, him delivering this year is very crucial to the Galaxy's success. You could blame it on last year on the back line. You could give him his grace. This year, he has an elite back line within Major League Soccer, I believe. So where do you stand on Novak Mitrovic?
I think the one quote that comes to mind whenever I'm discussing Novak Mitrovic with anyone is last year during a press conference, Greg Vanney, just bluntly out loud said, like, you have to start treating Mitrovic as just a goalkeeper, not a young goalkeeper anymore. I think that made it clear that the time is now for him to kind of be the guy, be a breakout player, be someone that the team can consistently rely on. Because let's be honest, last season for Mitrovic, he was quite fortunate to end up in the position where he ended up which was starting the season, having a shaky start, getting benched, and then once again being the starting goalkeeper. I mean, that's very rare to happen, and I honestly think that kind of saved his Galaxy career, where he had a good stretch in between Leagues Cup and that portion of the season. But yeah, this has to be the year for Novak Mitrovic to establish himself as the guy. I think over the years, looking at the Galaxy goalkeepers and looking at that championship season with John McCarthy, the one thing that stood out was, he would make great saves from time to time, but the one undoubtable trait he had was his ability to command the box, command the back line, be vocal, and be the guy when he needed to, right? Be decisive, make the decision and stick with it. A lot of times with Novak Mitrovic, I see him hesitate. I see him maybe not be, a bigger presence in the box when it comes to claiming crosses, when it comes to claiming corner kicks. I think the main thing with him is, can he develop that personality? Because goalkeepers, I think a good goalkeeper is a crazy goalkeeper, You want them to take risks. You want them to, go all out for what they do. You don't want your goalkeeper to, at the last second, when he's rushing an attacker to think, okay, I'm going to step back now. I don't think this is the right decision. You stay with your decision. And I think if you see an aggressive Novak Mitrovic, someone who's vocal, someone who can command his center backs, I think he's going to have a good season. Obviously, when you're assessing goalkeepers, it's going to be one of those things where you have to analyze the entire situation. And if you can take away that he is making the situation worse, then that's when you decide, okay, this is not going to work out. And again, I think this is Mitrovic's fourth season with the club, right? So This has to be it for him. This has to be the moment where you stamp yourself as the LA Galaxy goalkeeper for now and beyond, or there's going to be a chance you're going to have to look for somewhere else, or the Galaxy is going to move on, because you kind of the Galaxy invested a lot in Mitrovic, acquiring him those years ago. They viewed him as a top prospect in Serbia. He came from the same club that Georgi Petrovic came from, who was a great goalkeeper in his time in MLS when he was at New England Revolution. So coming in from a club that has that history of developing goalkeepers, Mitrovic has to show his talent, and he has to show that he can do that consistently this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and
go ahead.
JT Marcinkowski, I thought he had a pretty good
Oh yeah,
preseason
Uh-huh.
game. I thought his distribution was really good in that Chicago, or no, it was
St.
versus who was
Louis.
it, like St. Louis. I thought his
Yeah,
distribution
that's
was
the thing with
fantastic.
JT too. Like I hear a lot of good things about him. Obviously, he's an MLS veteran. He's a guy who went through, some tough injuries, was out of the game for about a year and a half. Um, but yeah, he's got some good competition. JT Martikowski is a starting caliber goalkeeper in this league. So if the Galaxy do end up pulling the plug on Mitrovic, I don't think there's going to be that much of a drop off between him and Martinkowski. So real competition there. It may not seem like it, but Martinkowski is a guy that a lot of people in the locker room like and that a lot of people in the club like. So if the situation occurs where Manny has to make a difficult choice, I don't think it will be so difficult for him.
Yeah. No, definitely. We do have a question from the chat too. You've been covering the Galaxy, as you've said, for going on your 5th season. Who do you think was one of the biggest disappointments for the Galaxy that was expected to do great for the club and just for whatever reason did not end up having a good tenure here?
I mean, the obvious answer would be Kevin Cabral. I always thought he had some talent in him. I always thought that his pace, his ability to kind of, have the ball at his feet and outrun defenders. I thought he could kind of be a guy similar to what you're seeing with Denny Bouanga, which is the pace kills, where if he gets a chance one-on-one with the goalkeeper, he'll at least be able to put him in the back of the net most of the time. But unfortunately, you've seen how that didn't work out. You can make a list maybe of like top like worst Galaxy DPs. He's definitely a top 3 in there. Given that he's big investment from League Two in France, and I think if he had a bit more confidence, you would have seen him flourish a little bit more. I think another name that comes to mind too, for me, not like a DP caliber level player, but Georgian Selvik. I thought at the time he would have been
Yeah.
good. He had a lot of pace. At the time MLS was one of those leagues where it was very reliant on athleticism and just having physical, fast defenders. I thought would have been able to be enough, but obviously very error prone. A player that you know over the time, obviously the fan base didn't like at all, and obviously it didn't work out. And I think another player too. This is more of circumstance rather than him just being bad. It was Christian Pavone. He was a really good player in that 2019 season and 2020 as well. And obviously he ended up being the reason why the Galaxy had a transfer ban later down the line. But I mean, he could have been a player that would have set up the Galaxy for success at the start of Greg Vanney's tenure instead of buying an inexperienced player like Kevin Cabral, which again, as we talked about, didn't turn out too well. But I think if he would have stayed with the Galaxy, he would have definitely at least raised the floor that first year of Vanney's season. I think he would have had a proven player and someone with enough talent to lift everybody else. But yeah, I think for me, he's the biggest what if, Christian Pavone, if he would have stayed with the LA Galaxy for a bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those stories where like, man, what could that have been like? You see like Evan Martinez gain his minutes at Arsenal, then that leading to like a World Cup for Argentina. It's kind of one of those stories like, what could have this been? And to kind of go the opposite side of the spectrum, Galaxy had some good players, but I'm focusing more on who's been the most enjoyable player to cover, like to speak to.
To speak
Is there one that
to,
sticks out?
there's a couple that speak out. I think Julian Araujo, when he was here, he was always very lively in the press conferences, and it felt very natural for him to kind of show a bit more of his personality. I'm trying to think now. I think Chicharito was interesting because he kind of gave those weird responses, or like he would kind of be more abstract. I didn't necessarily like talking to him, but I was more interested in like I wanted to see how his mind would comprehend the questions, and I'd be like, okay, this is an interesting way to answer that. And I'm trying to think recently. I mean, Dejan Joveljic was great because he would speak with the accent and he'd just give these cold like 1 or 2 sentence responses, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
like the guy had that it factor in it. And I'm trying to think a bit more. Mayoshida's always been a good one. It very much depends his mood. If he's in a happy mood, he'll be, a jokester. He'll joke around. He'll be great to talk to. And whenever it doesn't go well, you can tell like he's very disappointed. You can tell that he has that stern tone. So he's one of those people that on his mood, it sets the tone for the room. And obviously, us as reporters, it's key to read the room and kind of know how to talk to the athletes after a game. But he's an interesting one. If another one comes later to my mind, I'll shout it out. But those ones stand out for sure. I think Joveljic, was the most fun one because he would have a witty response, and he would just know how to kind of own the room in that sense. Not all the time, because at the start he wouldn't talk too much, but as 2024 season progressed, you kind of saw him gain that confidence, and he does have these one-liners that everybody loved in the press conference.
Definitely. We do have a question from the chat here. We've talked about the Galaxy's turnover, especially in the back line this offseason, and then you have the addition of Joao Klaus. How long do you think it's going to take for this team to gel? Or do you think it's going to take some time at all? And will they just hit the ground running and, just take off? Or do you think these vets like Maya Yoshida will have a jump back year? Miki Amane is another guy who could potentially be starting at that right back position this year. How long do you think, if at all, it will take for this team to, these new guys, these new faces to put production in?
Yeah, I honestly am pretty confident that it's not going to take too long for them to kind of reach that top gear, given that a lot of the players from last season are returning, like your Lucas Sanabrias, your Elijah Winders, right? Nascimento returning. So they already have experience with the club, how Greg Vanney wants to operate. And all the signings are MLS signings. They're not guys who have to adjust to everything that MLS, throws at you. The only thing they need to be learning is how the LA Galaxy are going to be playing. So I honestly don't think that it's going to take too long for them to gel. You had everybody, mostly everybody, come into Coachella, come into the preseason, get some training sessions, get some minutes. So I feel very confident that it's not going to take too long compared to last season. I think you'll see some players kind of, keep the floor pretty high, compared to last season, where you had all these new guys learning in the system and you really didn't know what to expect, and the floor was so low at the start of last season. But I think this year, with veterans on the team, with younger players in their second season with the LA Galaxy, and MLS veterans coming in to help the group, I don't think you're going to see them have a tremendous drop off like they did last season.
You mentioned a guy in there. Sorry, Tab. You mentioned a guy in there that's been hotly contested within the Galaxy community. Within our own podcast here, a lot of people picked him as their breakout player of the year in our season predictions. Lucas Sanabria, obviously didn't get off to having, a successful first season by his standards and by his transfer fee. You kind of talk about Kevin Cabral. Even though Cabral is a DP, Sanabria is U22, the transfer fees were very similar. Just it happened that Cabral was the designated player. I think the U22 rules were different around the time. It just ended up being a contract type of thing. Lucas Sanabria, I think the expectations are starting to build, and I think there's a lot of optimism. But what do you expect from him in 2026? Obviously, it seems like he's playing. We had Fagundes on the podcast. He kind of talked about the fact that Lucas Sanabria, a part of the reason why he had some struggles last year was the fact that he was playing the number 8 role, the box-to-box role. And he played number 6 with Nacional. He was a defensive midfielder, but you have Edwin Cerrillo there. Obviously, he won't play first game of MLS, but he's expected to be the starter throughout this season. Can Lucas Sanabria grow into that number 8 role? If not, what are the expectations for him going into 2026? What defines a successful season for him?
Yeah, I think last season, when I was kind of looking through Sanabria's film and analyzing everything, I think the one conclusion I came to was this is going to be a project, because Sanabria had only just one season of professional football with Nacional under his belt. He didn't necessarily have like a lot of the players have today, where they spend multiple years, maybe playing at the U17 level, or multiple years kind of maybe on loan with another team at the lower division. 2024 was Lucas Sanabria's first season pretty much playing professional soccer. And again, his talent is there, and when it comes to ability, he has, this trait of being able to kind of sniff out the ball. I think the best moments Sanabria had last season, and the moments where he flourished, was he can get physical into those challenges, get into those tackles, crash the box on occasion. And I think, last season was definitely a learning curve for Sanabria, because with Nacional, he wasn't really touching the ball. He wasn't necessarily being a guy to dictate possession. He was more of a, hey, if the ball comes towards me and I need to defend, I'm just going to get physical. I'm going to win the ball back. If I get the ball, I'm going to just pass it sideways or just to somebody else. I'm not going to be someone who's going to dictate the game. That's not going to work with Greg Vanny's system because he wants his midfielders to get on the ball, get as many touches as they can, manipulate the defensive line, manipulate, players and try to open up spaces. And I think that was the adjustment period for Sanabria, which was how do I go from, being someone who plays off the ball to someone who plays with the ball. And I think another year and a full preseason, because Sanabria wasn't able to play much of the preseason last year, is going to really help him get adjusted to that. Not to mention, he has a year under his belt with Gabriel Peck, with Mickey Mane, with the entire squad. So he kind of knows their tendencies now. And I think this year, you expect him to take the leap. Now, I don't expect him to necessarily rack up goals and assists or kind of, put up these great numbers, but, be someone like a Mark Delgado, which is, he's a silent killer. He's able to pass the ball. He's able to cover ground. He's able to be at the right place at the right time when it comes to tracking back on defense. And I think if he can just be half of what Mark Delgado was for the LA Galaxy, I think that's a successful 2026 for him. And obviously, it's a longer contract, I believe 5 years.
Yeah.
So the Galaxy pretty much want him to be the future of that position. So I think this year, like you said, needs to be kind of a step forward. And I think you kind of need to see that progress. But immediately off the bat, I don't think he's going to be an MLS All-Star or like a contender, for MLS Best 11. But I think you kind of want to see him take those steps where, you see why the Galaxy invested so much into him.
Right.
Yeah, and you saw start the last season with Delgado leaving. There's just a massive hole that is just gaping. And that's people kind of just said, we'll throw Snobby in there and he's going to fix everything. And then I think seeing that he didn't quite fill that gap the way people thought he was going to do, it kind of brought some questions to him. I think some of the questions could be unfair because maybe that's not the player he is. But I think the hole's still there. We're still missing that Mark Delgado player. And I think if he slots in there, I think he could be a great signing. Obviously, another player that came in alongside him was Elijah Winder, who kind of took that headlight from him, and he took the Mark Delgado spot better than Sanabria did. So between Winder and Sanabria, obviously Winder started in the preseason game versus Chicago, and that would kind of look like the first string squad. Do you think Winder is ahead of Sanabria in the depth chart right now?
I think so. I mean, I think back to the Campeones Cup game against Toluca, in which Elijah Winder was just bossed around that midfield. He looked like he belonged. I think obviously it's a heartbreaking game to remember if you're a Galaxy fan, but I mean, I think I was rewatching that game the other day. The intensity, like Elijah Winder's physicality matched it. Like he definitely belonged among, the two best teams. The Galaxy obviously played, up to the level of Toluca. They played up to the level of the occasion. And Elijah Winder belonged. I mean, he was smooth on the ball. He was physical when need be. He was just somebody who looked like he could be built for these big, intense playoff games. And I think that's what Greg Vandy wanted to see. I think that was one of the best performances of last season. Just, he didn't score goals. He, didn't necessarily have any assists, but he was a presence. And that's what you need in the midfield when you have guys like Marco Reus who aren't going to run, who aren't going to necessarily, move their bodies around given, his age and his durability. He's not going to risk it. And then just having someone next to Cerrillo who can kind of help keep possession, help rotate the ball. I do think Elijah Winder is a bit up ahead in that in this category we're talking about between Sanabria and Winder. But yeah, I think it's not too far of a gap. I think Sanabria does some really great things, but I think Elijah Winder is more well-rounded, and I think he's better versed for Greg Vanny's system. And I think, like you mentioned, he was in that, I guess, top squad or highest, squad against Chicago Fire. I think that's a good sign for him. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of how he develops this year. Him and Sanabria, I think, can really be a good 1-2 punch if they start together. Obviously, you have Cerrillo in the mix there and Hack as well, so it's very unlikely you see that, but just the fact that the Galaxy is able to have a physical midfield and kind of, boss some people around in those trenches, I think that's really important to setting the tone, not just for the offense, but for the defense as well.
Definitely. Yeah. We have CONCACAF in 2 days. We talked about that earlier, but this season's here. The reality is that the Galaxy have a flight to Panama. I believe they're on now.
I know
they
landed.
Yeah. Man, Sporting San Miguelito are first place in their respective conference in the Panama division. it's not to say that the Galaxy are the underdog in this case, because we're not. I believe they're moving this game to a bigger stadium, or that's still to be decided. Um, Either way, this team's going to be hungry. So I did want to transition into that match. This is the first game of the 2026 season. However, Sporting San Miguelito has had, I believe, 6 matches. And as we discussed, they're off to good form already. Galaxy played Coachella Valley Invitational. It looked like they had to take that seriously a bit some games and get guys minutes, play almost the full 90 of your starting squad to make sure that these guys are ready to go. I mean, what are expectations before we go into lineups and score predictions for this game? But what do you want to see out of the LA Galaxy going into 2026? This first little test here in Panama.
Yeah, I think it's all about setting the tempo. I think talking to Edwin Cerrillo on Monday, he's kind of just talking about, hey, the team needs to set the standard like early in the season. Set the standard of work rate, set the standard of commitment, set the standard of how they want to play. And whether it's a weaker team or the strongest lineup, doesn't matter. I think the expectation is for the LA Galaxy and everybody on that flight is that you need to get a result so that way you're not chasing the game at home like they were last season against the team from Costa Rica. I forgot the name, Herediano, I think it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of don't want to be in that situation because CONCACAF is going to CONCACAF. There's going to be moments in which things are going to happen that you can't explain, and you want to be best prepared to avoid having those moments truly affect the season. The Galaxy are heavy favorites in this game, and if they advance, they'll likely be heavy favorites against Mount Pleasant, the team from Jamaica.
Right.
So I think the expectation is from everyone in the club is that they're going to take this seriously, that they're not going to leave it up for second chances. They're not going to leave it up for CONCACAF to have something funky happen and maybe ruin the run in the CCC. But yeah, I think everyone is locked in for this business trip, the first business trip of the season. I think Greg Vanny kind of talked about the mentality of, being the favorites in this, and that he's just emphasizing for everybody to just be ready to, put work in, get tackles in, because, yes, on paper you are the heavy favorites, but I mean, this team has nothing to lose. San Miguelito want to, make a name for themselves. They want to put up a good performance. Obviously, playing in Panama is a huge advantage for them, even though it might not be in their stadium. It's still going to be in their home country. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Galaxy perform. I think last year against Herediano, I mean, you saw that the team kind of just, I don't want to say played down to the level, but the same intensity just wasn't there. And I think that group has learned a lot from what that experience was like, and I think they're going to do their best to not repeat that this year.
Yeah, I think the Galaxy team that rocked up to Herediano in Costa Rica, they're a bit naive. It was a young squad. I believe in that game you had Harbor Miller and Ruben Ramos Jr. starting. So that just showed kind of the depth that we had coming into the season in 2025. And this season I think we're a whole lot stronger, and we have that 1 year belt of CCC under our belt. And in that case, I think we have that experience now. We saw what happens when you travel to Central American countries, and it's not hard, or it's not easy to go into there, play at a high level. Obviously, seen teams struggle. Club America tied 0-0 in their opening CCC match, and they had a rotated squad. And you see teams like LAFC who rock out with a full strength lineup versus, I don't know who they played, but they smacked them. So it'll be interesting to see what Vanny kind of does. I don't think you see a full strength lineup going into this game, though. I think you see kind of a rotated lineup, not fully rotated. I think you still see likes of Gabriel Peck, Joseph Pansel starting, but I also don't think you see everyone starting that started in that first string game. I think you see a little bit of a mix of both squads. So that's my prediction. I'm not sure about what you think, Payne, so we'll go to you.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be a bit of a mix as well. I wanted to go into the injury news. John Nelson and Mauricio Cuevas were dealing with some injuries over preseason. They are cleared to play this game. They will be 100% available and healthy for it. Elijah Winder, I know we talked about him potentially being over Lucas Sanabria at the moment. He's questionable, at least for this match. So would I be surprised to see Lucas Sanabria start? We'll go into starting lineups here, but no. I think he very much could start this game. Isaiah Parente, another midfielder, is out for the LA Galaxy. If you want to go even more shallow into the midfield depth, Eric Tommy is out for this match. Chris Brindov, I mean, we have a lot of center backs, but he's also out for this match, dealing with various injury issues already. I mean, it's to be expected. A lot of these guys coming off of preseason, getting back into shape, getting back on the pitch, will take little knocks here and there. None of this seems long-term to me. Alex, I know you probably have more information on that, so I'll pass it over to you in a second here. But I wanted to go over my lineup first on what I would expect the Galaxy to roll out in CONCACAF. I would start Novak Mitrovic. I think he will be in net. I think John Nelson will be starting at left back. And I think you'll see Amiro Garces and Jakub Golesnes at center back. I think you'll see Miki Amane at right back. I think you'll see a midfield of Justin Hack, Lucas Sanabria, and Marco Royce. And then I think the front line will be Peck, Paintsel, Klaus. So, Alex, any updates on the injuries and the severities? And then you could tell me what your lineup would be for this game.
Yeah, so all that you said is, for the injury report, all accurate. I think Greg Granny emphasized that this isn't anything long-term, just more knocks and things they're trying to manage. Obviously, they have, 4 games in 10 days, so they're going to be very cautious with minutes. They, obviously the Galaxy have upgraded in depth, but at the same time, you don't want to risk that it thinning out. You don't want to risk players who are maybe feeling something. But yeah, I think with my lineup, I'd have JT Martinkowski in goal. I think, for most teams, you kind of have you have the other goalkeeper start in the cup tournaments. And I think JT Martinkowski, being an MLS veteran, being someone who I think is a little bit more experienced than Novak Mitrovic, I think you're going to have him in goal. John Nelson, I see him starting. I think Julian Aude, again, is going to probably start the season as a starter. So you'll see him on Sunday against New York. I have Maya Yoshida and Amiro Garcia. So I have that 2 tandem starting, just because Maya, again, has already had that experience in CONCACAF, and obviously Glessens has 2, but I think they're going to try to save him for the home opener. Right back, I can see Harbour Miller again playing. I think that he's got that work rate, he's got that motor, he's got that ability to go up and down. So I think they're going to use him a lot for the CCC run. In midfield, Lucas Sanabria starting. I can also see Marco Royce and Ruben Ramos Jr. kind of see just 1-6 and then 2 8/10s kind of going at it. I think Ruben Ramos Jr. With that goal he had in preseason is a good confidence builder. And again, I think the team really kind of wants to see some young players like Harbour Miller, like Ruben Ramos Jr. kind of keep taking those steps in their development. Still very young players, but obviously getting these first team experience and experiences playing in CONCACAF is going to be a good character builder for them. I think on the left wing, you'll see Paintsel. I think you'll see Nascimento starting in this game. I think João Klaus might come in the second half if need be, and then Gabriel Pack as well. I think he'll start the game, but I think he'll be on a limits restriction given that they want a good start to the season on Sunday. So I don't if you see a lot of a strong 11, I expect there to be a good amount of rotation. I expect players like a Paintsel or a Pack or even a Marco Royce for sure not to play the entire 90 minutes, maybe 60, things like that. But yeah, I think that's going to be a team where it's a mix of some veterans and a mix of guys who maybe aren't used to playing in the A squad of the LA Galaxy.
Right. I also forgot. Sorry, Tab. Edwin Cerrillo is good for this game, but out for the home opener. I'll throw him in my starting lineup.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If he's not playing Sunday, then I think they'll probably roll him the full 90. So I think you'll start in place of Sanabria. So I'd go Sanabria, or I would go Cerrillo, Hack, and Royce. But go on, Tab.
You just took my point. I was going to act all smart and say like, oh, he's gone for the first game, so he can play full 90. But yeah, so Cerrillo's out for Sunday's game, so I think he rocks full 90, like you said. But start from the back, I think we have Mikovic in goal. Just kind of get the reps in. I think before the season is good for him. Obviously, playing in the atmosphere that is a little bit different, I think it'll also be a good test for him to see if he is that guy. I think you have John Nelson starting at left back, and I like what you said, Alex, about the Yoshida-Garces partnership. I think his experience is what we're used to. We don't need to start Hack and Glesnes in a game like this. I think you see Yamani at right back, and then I think you see Cerrillo, Sanabria, and then I think you see a Royce at the 10, and then I think you have Paintsel, Nascimento, and Peck up top. I think you see rotation depending on how well the team's doing. Like LAFC, I don't know why they kept their stars in for so long. If I'm not mistaken, they almost played full 90. I think if they're up 2-0 at halftime. I think you see Peck and Payne Sol Royce come off, and I think you see some changes for like Harbor Miller, Rupert Ramos Jr. So I think it's going to be a pretty rotated lineup come second half, but I think you're going to run out most of the starters for that first half to get some minutes under their legs, and then come into Sunday feeling good.
Okay. All right. It's time. Our first score predictions of the 2026 season. Oh, man. First of all, I would like to break down what I think I would expect from the Galaxy coming into this match. You know, I don't want people to be surprised if this team comes out a little sluggish, because we haven't played an actual competitive match so far in 20. We haven't played a competitive match since October, I believe it was. We've had that friendly against Club America. This team is going to be a bit rusty. So, even though the opponent's a bit lower tier, I would still expect them to be up for this match. This is huge. This is a huge match for them against the LA Galaxy, model franchise across all of North America, historic club. They're going to be up for it. They know that there's going to be a lot of attention on this game. So I think they'll put a lot of good fight into the first half, but I think second half, you're going to start to see a lot of, substitutions come in, and the Galaxy are going to just have more depth, obviously, than the team from Panama, and they're just going to run them to the ground a bit. So my first prediction of the season, I think the Galaxy will come out of Panama with a 2-0 win. And I believe the goal scorers will be, I'm going to go Gabriel Peck and Joao Klaus, I think, will be the two scorers for the LA Galaxy. And all things considered, very positive result going back to LA. So, Alex, pass it to you.
Yeah, I think all good, valid points there. I think the team is definitely going to be very focused on being able to, for sure, get a good amount of minutes in these tough conditions. I think last year was a good lesson for the team to kind of not underestimate an opponent, to kind of not drop off their levels, keep that intensity. Obviously, Central America is a very different environment compared to what you deal with with MLS. But I think the team's going to be up for it. I think there's enough talent on both ends to be able to, put up a good result, be able to compete, and come away. I'm going to say the same scoreline as you, 2-0. I think it's probably going to be, it'll be a good result. For goal scorers, I'll go with one of the center backs. I feel like there might be a corner kick goal, and I feel like a center back's going to score. Again, I don't know who's going to be starting, but I'm just going to say a center back. So one of the center backs is going to score. And then I just think that, Gabriel Peck's had a good preseason, so I think a goal for him as well. So those are my predictions.
All right, perfect. Tab. Oh, and then quickly, Alex, who do you think gets armband?
For sure, Yoshida, if he's playing. If not, I wouldn't be surprised if Evan Cerrillo gets the armband. I think last season he had a couple games. I think Greg Vandy's very much emphasized Cerrillo being a leader, being someone that can rally the troops. And I think that, if maybe you kind of don't have players like a Hack or, a Glesnes, or like Royce on the field, or anybody else who has some experience, I think it'll go to Cerrillo. I think further down the line, I think he's a player that might spend a good chunk of his career with the LA Galaxy. So down the future, I wouldn't be surprised if he ever ends up being a captain of the LA Galaxy.
Perfect. Tab?
I'm going to go 3-1. I think maybe we get a little sloppy towards the end. You have some young guys coming in, so maybe give up a goal late on. But I think it's going to be a pretty dominant performance from the Galaxy. And goal scorers, I think Peck gets a brace. And then whoever's starting at the 9, I think is going to get a goal. If it's Joao Klaus, if it's Nascimento, or if it's Ramirez coming on late, he gets a goal. I think whoever's at that 9 position is going to get one. And my one worry for this game is, so I played at a D3 school, and we played a D1 school for some reason before they went into their tournament, and we didn't make the tournament this year. So in that game, it was 2-0 going just into halftime, and we somehow scored a goal against this team. And we go into halftime thinking, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get a good result against this squad. And we were 1 goal away from them. And it was pretty darn close. We had some chances to tie it up and maybe take the lead. And you can't get complacent, because that's what happened to that D1 team. And I think that's where I worry with the Galaxy. Obviously, they got that game last year versus Herediano, and they've kind of been through that story before. They've read that book. So hopefully they close that chapter and move on to the next one. But if they get complacent, I think this could be dangerous. And we saw it last season. But to finish that story, we got smacked 7-1 in the end. So They turned it up and we lost. So hopefully that's the same case for the Galaxy.
Yeah, hopefully we get a 7-1 result.
Yeah.
Just to one up LAFC over there. You know, it's interesting with rotation and minutes. I think obviously a lot of these guys aren't in fitness, and then you have to turn it around 3 days later and play your first, home opener at Dignity Health Sports Park for the LA Galaxy on Sunday against New York City. They're a very good team last year. Obviously, made a pretty good playoff run. Had some turnover in the offseason, but I'd still expect they're about a playoff team, if I had to guess. So Sporting San Miguelito, I think you're going to already have the travel miles on the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Some of these players not going to be fully in fitness. And then you have to turn it around against New York City. Historically, the Galaxy have been very good in home openers besides last year. Last year was the very weird exception against San Diego. Maybe that was the telltale sign that 2025 just wasn't going to be our year. But I tend to favor them when it comes to home openers, and I think this is no different for me. New York City FC, we've seen the Galaxy play them in the home opener. I believe it was 2021. I believe it was maybe 2022. They won that game, I believe, by Chicharito-esque game. I'm cloudy on the memories, but I remember we win. It was like a late winner for the Galaxy. I'm feeling it this weekend. I think the vibes are going to be there. Dignity Health Sports Park is going to be rocking. The vibes are going to be good. The atmosphere is going to be back. And you talk about a clean slate. This is a clean slate for everybody. It felt like the environment towards the end of last year, even after the fan protests, everybody comes back. It was still down because the team was down and everybody wants to see the Galaxy win at the end of the day. And the results weren't coming our way, and it looked better towards the end of last year, but still wasn't putting people in seats. That's all gone. And you start putting results on the board, people will show up for this team, and I think the team will seize the opportunity. New York City are very dangerous to the LA Galaxy with that front line. I think their attack is going to cause the Galaxy some problems. They have a great goalkeeper as well that just has the ability to stand on his head in an individual match. I would expect they throw out their complete first choice lineup for this game. So I think we're going to be guns blazing. They're going to be guns blazing. And I think we're going to come out with the win. Starting lineup wise, before I go into my score prediction, I'd say starting lineup for this game is just literally going to be what I think is the Galaxy's first choice squad. So I think you have Novak in goal. You have Julian Ade left back. You have Amiro Garces and Jakub Golesnes center backs. You have Mauricio Cuevas right back. You have Lucas Sanabria in the midfield. Oh no, you have Elijah Winder in the midfield, and you have you might have Sanabria too. I mean, I would say Hack, Winder, and Royce in the midfield, and then Peck, Paintsill, and Klaus as the front line again for the Galaxy. I think some of these guys are going to get hooked in Panama. Like you might see a Klaus start, but Nascimento comes in by halftime type of thing. To preserve them for this game, and I think they'll go 90 in this match. So lineup wise, do either of you guys have anything different?
I'm not sure, let me think about 1 sec. Because I know in the Chicago game, I think that's the first string lap that Greg Vanny kind of hinted towards. But I don't think Hack played very well at the 6. He didn't control a game like Edwin Cerrillo did. So I'm just not convinced at this point for Hack playing a single pivot by himself. And I saw later in the second half, they obviously made the changes and they played a little bit more direct and didn't play through Hack. So I think that worked. But I think I'm worried with Hack at the 6. So I'd like to see Ciro back. Obviously he's suspended though, but that's my one concern. But I agree with everything else pretty much.
I think it's different too, because I think the Galaxy build out in different ways. I think going forward, maybe they have Hack play a bit more advanced, which is what you're referencing. But when they're going back, I think you see him tuck into that center back role. And, it's his first game. It's a preseason game. It's his first, full match playing into that. number 6 role. I think it's something that, he's played for New York City systematically, maybe not on the team sheet, but systematically he's also played as a defensive midfielder at times. So I think it's something he's capable of. It just might take a little time. So I think they'll start with that. But predictions wise, we will start with our guest here, Alex Ruiz. Home opener. The slate's clean. Everybody's on 0 points. Right now, the Galaxy have not lost in 2026. So go ahead with your prediction and how you think this match will unfold.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good match. Obviously, Justin Hack facing his former club, the team he spent years with in the academy, and obviously was able to break out into being a starter for New York. So I think that'll be fun to watch. I do think that this will be a game where you see the stronger lineup, as we were talking about. Also, too, Greg Vanny did emphasize on Monday's presser that, they are playing, 4 games in 10 days, but once they get the Panama trip out of the way, they're just sleeping in their beds for the next days, where they're not having to travel, they're not having to worry about that. It's just about recovery. So I think you will see, not a strong rotation on Sunday compared to how I think we're all anticipating on Thursday. So I do think you'll see, Peck, Paintsel, Klaus, and all these guys that you're talking about just going out and playing maybe at least 70 minutes for sure. I can see them getting an extended run out. I don't know the lineup, but I do expect it to be pretty strong. I'll say probably 3-1. I think that New York City has gone through a lot of changes, a lot of different things, whether losing Alonso Martinez last year, so he'll be out for a majority of this season with the ACL injury, that he was their top goal scorer. Justin Hack was a big part of New York City kind of being very versatile and being a lot better on the defensive end, so losing him was massive. So I think that they will be vulnerable. You brought up Matt Freese, who's a great goalkeeper, but again, early season where you kind of don't have that, you kind of have that rust, right? So I don't think he'll be in top form compared to how you'll see him later down the line. So I think a 3-1 win for the Galaxy is in the cards. I can see Paintsel getting a brace, and I can see, a Royce scoring in there, and I think maybe the 1 goal you give up might be on a set piece.
Yeah, set pieces already.
Wouldn't be surprised. I'm gonna go 2-0. I think this New York City start's pretty lackluster. They missed out. Funny story. They missed out on their DP signing because they agreed to terms with them,
Yes.
but then they went back on it and something. So that deal fell through. So they're currently without a DP9. And previously, Alonso Martinez, like you said, was on their squad. And he was super dangerous. Costa Rican, I believe. He was really good, but he's out with the ACL. You have Maxi Morales pulling the strings at the 10 position. He's like 40 years old. So who knows what he has in his legs still. And they've got some good wingers. They have, I'm pretty sure Talis Magnum's out for this game, I believe. I saw somewhere. He's a pretty good winger. And they got this guy named Mercado, who's pretty good. He had some good games in playoffs. So that's what I got to keep an eye out for. But I mean, apart from that, I just don't see us conceding a goal. Obviously, maybe like a set piece or something, because they got the big guys in the back. But I don't see us conceding through open play, considering our new defensive acquisitions. So I'm going to go 2-0.
All right. I'm going to go. What's your goal scores?
I'll go Klaus and Paintsel.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go 2-1 LA Galaxy. I think we will concede probably an open play goal around 80th minute or beyond, just to make things interesting, because we can never just peacefully close out a match, it feels like. Goal scorers, I would say Joseph Paintsel will get his first. And then the second one, I'm going to go with an odd one. I think Julian Ade. I think Julian Ade is going to go and get a goal in this match. You've heard a lot about him this offseason, and I think this is really his prove it year. U22 left back, that's a very valuable spot to be using on a left back. And I think if he wants to stay at the Galaxy beyond this year, or even make a move to Europe potentially, this has to be his year as the Pendon starter. Extended John Nelson in the offseason. He'll get some good minutes in there. But I think this is Julian Ade's spot to take. Really excited to see him play the season. Make or break year for him. I have him penned in for a goal. And then I think, Paintsel on the counterattack or something will probably end up. Man, I'm really excited for this Galaxy, this new look Galaxy team and this front line, because it just feels like Vanny got all the pieces that he's just been itching for all of these years. especially, I mean, he inherited Dejan Joveljic as a striker, and man, Dejan Joveljic ended up becoming absolute killer for the Galaxy. But his hold up play, and just Klaus systematically, the way that he fits the Vanny system, is something that I'm excited for, because I think that, in terms of value, he's going to be a huge asset for the Galaxy. That revamped back line, we might have a top 5 back line in Major League Soccer. Just the depth that we have in every position too. It looks totally different than last year. Over the course of the season, I think maybe the midfield depth could hold us back a little bit from reaching our full potential. But this game, I think, this team shows up for home openers. You see it. These big matches matter to them. San Diego last year, I'm just going to count it off as a fluke, because I think historically the Galaxy have gotten up for these games, and I don't think it'll be any different. So, they're going to send the Pigeons home back to New York City. And I think New York City, like you referenced, Tab, are still like building right now. They're still completing that roster. It's hard to give an accurate representation of where they're going to be by the end of the year. We might look back at the end of the season and be like, wow, we beat a New York City team that ended up being really good. And it's just because right now, it seems like they're not fully ready for the season to start. They could use an extra couple weeks. But the Galaxy have been ready. The Galaxy have been ready for a little while now, ever since Eric Tommy was signed to start, and he's not playing this match. So, I mean, all things considered, I think, the general vibes. Will everyone be there? Everyone, you're going to be here, Alex? You're going to be there, obviously, Alex?
Yeah, I'll definitely be there for the home opener. First game of the season. Got to be there. Definitely excited to cover that match. So, yeah, I'll be there.
Tab?
I will be there as well.
There we go. We're going to have the whole gang. It's super exciting. Super exciting times for the MLS season to start again. You're going to have, I believe the opening match is Miami. Is that the opening match? Miami LAFC?
That's the one game they are promoting, but I think the first game of the season is St. Louis and Charlotte, like at 11 in the morning Pacific
That's
time.
A really interesting match. That's like a
just cross-conference game right there to start the year. So
all right.
a little bit of
the St. Louis history of St. Louis. Those early kickoff games. It's in St. Louis, right?
There was kicking off in St. Louis. But
yeah,
it's
I
gonna be
remember.
Not like that.
Yeah, the Galaxy always play St. Louis at like the morning for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why the league has mandated that. I don't know what the LA Galaxy did, but I think this year they are playing again in like 12. It's like one of those Sunday early kickoffs as well. So yeah,
This game was a fever dream.
I hate those
that
games.
keeps giving. So
I wish we could get like a nice little 5:30 p.m. St. Louis match. Every time we play them, it's at like, all right, crack of dawn, we're ready to go. That's crack of dawn for me. The Galaxy, the Galaxy look like they don't wake up for those matches either. It feels like most of the time, but it's really odd. But you're gonna get a full, weekend of soccer. I mean, even if you want to watch CONCACAF right now, you can. I know some people in the chat were watching the LAFC game earlier. Hate watching that one. I believe there's more CONCACAF tomorrow too.
Yeah.
And then you have our match on Thursday. So, you got things to build yourself up for the MLS season. MLS season pass. If you're a season ticket holder, you're able to redeem your Apple TV subscription, turn on some MLS. And I believe you don't have to buy a separate season pass. You get Apple TV, right?
yeah, so you're able to just buy Apple TV. So you get MLS season pass. You get Formula One, which is coming to Apple TV this year, and you also get, I think, MLB Friday nights as well. So if you like other sports like Formula One or baseball, it's definitely worth it for sure. And I think Apple TV has a good catalog of shows and movies on there as well. So it's definitely worth it. Definitely an upgrade compared to just buying just MLS season pass by itself. So makes sense. You'll get people into the other sports, and again, you just grow Apple TV. I don't know why they barely made this decision 3 years into the deal. I think anybody with a brain could have known that just put it all together. It's worth it. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, you forget it's a World Cup year, because MLS has done pretty much nothing to tie themselves to the World Cup, which is a little concerning, because that's usually supposed to be a bump up. So, hopefully with that Apple TV restriction dropping, the Galaxy are going to be able to, get some new fans coming to the stadium this year with the World Cup. A lot of people are going to have their eyes turned to soccer, especially in the summer. So, Exciting times to be a Galaxy fan, exciting times to be a soccer fan in America. We will have a live watch along of the CONCACAF match on Thursday. So we usually start those 10 minutes before the scheduled kickoff. So we'll usually wait there for 20 minutes, talk over the lineups, preview the match, give a last prediction, and we'll tie things up as it is. But yeah, I'm very
I got one more
excited.
thing
Go ahead.
before we close it off. Obviously, you're out with the haircut last podcast, and so we didn't get to hear your opinion on the New Jersey. So I'm gonna get your opinion, and then Alex, you'll go after Peyton.
New Jersey. I talked about it on the News Across the Galaxy podcast this weekend. We did a live mega season preview. It's underwhelming to me, in my opinion. I mean, it just feels like 2019 repeated over again. I know there's some finer details. Like I like the stars in the badge. I think like the little things count like that. But for me, and I know how much flack I got for this. They ended up moving past the topic in News Across the Galaxy before I could address it. I'm over the sash. I'm over the sash. I think the Ghost Sash should have been the last Sash Galaxy kit because it just represents an era that we're not in anymore to me. And I understand it's iconic and it's a Galaxy thing, and it's the Galaxy when it's a sash. But I think we've done kits very well, like the City of Dreams kit, beautiful kit, doesn't have a sash. I feel like you do not need a sash to have a fashionable kit. And that's what I feel like we need to be looking towards right now, especially when you have, a team across the city that's very marketable. People like their color scheme. It's people like you see the jersey everywhere. You see the hat everywhere. And it's not necessarily because people even like the team or club. It's more fashionable than a big old sash all the way across the jersey. The sash isn't fully complete, which looks awkward. The sponsor placement's weird. That being said, I don't hate it. I mean, when it goes on discount, if there's a good price on it, then sure, I'll throw Joseph Paintsell on the back of it. But for me, it just feels like we could have aimed much higher than this, and I'm a little let down because it just feels a little lazy to me. So I would give it a 6 out of 10. I would give it a 6 out of 10 if I had to rate it as a kit. I think it will be forgotten in a few years, but it's not terrible. Alex?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. I'm not really a fan of white kits on teams. Obviously white's it's a bland color. The sash obviously is the main detail of this jersey. I think from far away you can tell it's an LA Galaxy jersey. Like you kind of have that imagery there where if maybe you're 50 feet away from me and I see the kit, like I'm like, oh, that's a Galaxy jersey. I know the design. I know it's iconic. It's symbolic and it's very closely tied with the club. Looking at the finer details, like I don't really mind nor care too much about it. I'm one of those people who's like, hey, as long as I know it's a Galaxy jersey, like that's fine with me. Is it something that I'd wear out casually? No. Again, I'm not really the type of guy who wears out white jerseys casually. Usually, you'll see me with like different colors jerseys or whatnot, stronger colors. You'll never see me out with a white jersey unless I have to be in a white jersey. But yeah, not a crazy big fan of it, but at the same time, I don't hate it. It's just one of those like, oh, another white LA Galaxy kit.
Yeah, they usually knock out the away kits, though. Every time they have a chance at a new away kit, they'll just impress. I mean, Ryzen's kind of grown off of me. I think that's just the fact that team last year was so bad that we don't have many good memories attached to it. But, like, man, the community kit, like, even the LA kit. I'm trying to think. What was
even the retro one they had, I think, 2 years ago. That one was a really good one. I have that one here. I think the club gave it to me at the time. But yeah, I really wish the Galaxy played more games in that jersey or had a full season with it because it is really, really good. The colors pop. It just has that aura to it that you just know that's like a retro like Galaxy vibe. But yeah, really sad that you only saw that for half a season.
Yeah, if that. I mean, probably played like 4 games in it.
I think it was 3 games in total, yeah. So, yeah. Not much at all.
Marco Royce debuted in it.
Yes,
where he got
he
the goal
debuted in
versus
that.
Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, he did the LA thing.
Yeah. And then I have news on the away kit for next season. So it was reported by Footy Headlines that Galaxy will be getting their jersey, the new away kit before the mini season. So this season we'll have the new, what's this called? Velocity kit and the Grandson kit. And then after the season, the mini season happens and Galaxy will have the Velocity and then a new away kit. And then after the mini season, it'll be like that full season with the full schedule change. And then we'll have the velocity in the new away kit. So that's kind of the timeline. I'm working on a post trying to make it make sense. So I'll probably come out in a few days. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll try to make more sense of it.
Yeah, the velocity kit, man. I don't even know where they get velocity from. Like they'll just throw out a kit and put a really random backstory behind it, and I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Like I don't think many people like really understand that or know where they're coming from. But hey, velocity, man. Anyway, we well ran over our time here. I mean, it's the season prediction. We're back, everyone. As we referenced, we will have the live watch along on Thursday. What time is kickoff scheduled for?
I believe 5 o'clock.
5:30.
Yeah, 5:30. Yeah, in that area.
Oh, it's 5. It's just 5. Okay.
It's 5, yeah.
All right. Well, I will be, live at probably 4:50. Tab, Alex,
I'll do my best.
you're welcome to join me. But what did you say, Tab?
I'll do my best to hop on. I have to see
Okay.
how my schedule comes along.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm excited. The Galaxy season is this close to kicking off, everyone. Alex, thank you very, very much for joining the podcast today. Appreciated all of the insight that you gave us into the team. Love your work on the Galactic Tribune. Plug your work. Go ahead, plug it again.
Yeah, so you can find my articles and coverage of the LA Galaxy on the galactictribune.org. You can also find just most of my tweets, news, quick things on Twitter/X at ALXRuiz15. So that's kind of usually where I'll have all the information there as well. So this year, kind of hoping to have more video stuff out, more video content out, just to be able to kind of expand to that. So, whenever I start doing that, if you follow me on both the Galactic Tribune and on X, you'll be notified when that happens.
Thank you very much for hopping on. And then Tab.
Galaxy Runs Away over on Instagram, TikTok, and X.
All right, everyone, make sure to go support the Galactic Tribune over there. Thank you, Tab. Thank you, Alex, for hopping on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for letting me talk. I really appreciate it. It was really fun having this conversation with you guys.
Anytime. And, hopefully next podcast we're talking about 2 Galaxy wins going into the second leg here. So we could only hope. As for myself, I am at Anfield Headlines _ or, Talking Galaxy. You could find us on Instagram. We have a TikTok running. And yeah, we're looking to expand to Spotify soon. So, I know we've had a lot of questions on Spotify. We're going to look into it, guys. So yeah, thank you all for the support, and I will see you on the live watch along Thursday, 4:50. Be there, please.